Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the PivotBoss pre-market video for Wednesday, February 12th, 2025. I'm Frank Ochoa, aka PivotBoss. Happy hump day, everyone. Here's a look at the ES and the daily time frame. Selling pressure coming in right on the release of CPI and core CPI data. All marks coming in a bit higher than expected. CPI month over month for the month of January here. 0.5% versus a 0.3% estimate. The CPI year over year number coming in at 3% versus 2.9% as the forecast. So a bit hotter than expected here. The core CPI numbers coming in hotter than expected as well, and the immediate reaction was selling pressure right out of the gate from the highs of the day now to the lows of the day. And it's keeping prices again within range here for the ES. You can see how it's been chopping above and below kind of the break-even point for the previous month's close there. So that's the break-even point here for the month. And you're just seeing kind of price chop above and below that level right now as this thing builds tremendous energy in this compression. Not really seeing overall strength here to drive this thing out of the range, which means we could be looking at a rotation back down, perhaps into 59.50, perhaps even down toward 5,800 within the larger trading range here. So right now, seeing some selling pressure come into play here in the opening minutes after CPI data released. We also have Fed Chair Powell testifying before Congress again today for a second day at 9 a.m. Central, which could bring about a bit more headline risk as well. So right now, seeing some selling pressure, also tariffs in focus as well, which could be an indication of rising inflation to come. So we are seeing quite a bit of selling pressure materialize here. Do we get a breakdown that leads us back toward 59.50 up ahead? Or can we find a strong low here that kind of keeps prices in check here throughout much of the day? So again, keeping an eye on this market here. Already 95% of ADR with 70 points of range. This thing's been averaging about 74 points per day on a 10-day basis, about 63 points per day on a 5-day basis. So right now, showing some weakness here, and really any pullback could be a selling opportunity on an intraday basis here until we see a strong low, and still building tremendous energy as well. That compression right here continues to build out, and with the lack of bullish intent at the moment, that could lead to, again, a drop into 59.50, maybe back to 5,900 in the near term. Looking at the NQ, very similar price action out of the NQ, down 1.25% right now. Heavy selling pressure coming out of the gate since CPI data was released. And we could be looking at further weakness here up ahead as well. This one's only at 88% of ADR heading into the RTH Open. It's been averaging about 380 points per day. On a 10-day basis, 327 on a 5. Right now we're at 335 with more potential downside ahead. Again, on this impulse sell-off here, if you can find a strong morning low, perhaps there's a snapback to the middle of the day's range, and that could lead to kind of a holding pattern here within this middle portion of the range here. So a strong low could kind of stave off additional bleed out here, but if there's not some sort of rejection here, we could continue to see that rotation downward a bit more. Today could become a 500-point day at the very least. So how much more do we go? Do we get it back to the previous quarter's close here? Perhaps not all in one day, but does it get there eventually here? Do we get a move that takes us back toward recent lows for the year? How's that going to play out? Is this market clearly building tremendous energy here for a forthcoming breakout move? Looking at crude oil, this one down 1.2% at the moment. This one's been a little back and forth here, especially around that 72 level. Still maintaining a downward bias here, but we've had a pretty aggressive bounce over the last 3 days to recover 72s. if this current pullback here can find a higher low on 72, maybe there's a little bit more upside that can come out of this thing. But overall, we continue to see a very clear bearish downtrend. VPOC has now shifted down. It was at 78.50. We're now down to 71.61, which means price could get stuck in this area for a while longer before the next move occurs. So right now the upside move has to be kind of taken with a bit of a grain of salt here, as the overall downtrend remains intact. A failure at 72 and we're back to 70 and chopping between basically 74 and 70 until proven otherwise. Looking at gold futures, this one down 1.3%. The previous session here putting in a very strong high. That was in overnight trading. We mentioned in our trading room yesterday that that could be seen as a strong high here, coming just shy of the 3,000 level. We had 3,000 as the next upside target. We got within 71.5 points of that target. We're still in a very clear and bullish uptrend right now. We are testing the 8-period average in the uptrend. So this is going to be a big test here. Can this market bounce back and find new highs into 3,000? Or does yesterday's strong high continue to serve as a strong high and rotate this thing back down? If it does push back down, 2,800 will be the key level to watch here. And then from 2,800, maybe there's a bounce back to 3,000 as a larger range materializes. So still in the uptrend, and pullbacks have been buying opportunities in gold. The only thing that's a bit different is that the previous session put in a very, very strong high here in overnight trading, and that high could be an indication that we've reached our limit here to the upside for the near term. But keep an eye on this pullback here. These pullbacks into the 8-period average have been an opportunity to take this thing back up. So the trend is still intact, but we could be seeing signs of a strong high developing here in the near term. Looking at the YM right now down 1% here. Heavy selling pressure coming out on CPI data. 90% of ADR right now, 489 points of range. This thing's been averaging 530 on 10 and 5 day splits. So we could be looking at more range up ahead. Again, a very strong high and a sell-off. If we can find ourselves a strong morning low, there could be at least a snapback to the intraday midpoint. But we're still, again, compressing in this range here. There could be more downside that takes us into 44K as just a short-term downside target over the next 1 to 2 days. And failure to hold 4,400 opens up a return back toward the previous year's closing price here. That's around the 42.8 zone. And then from there, do we drop further still? 42K down below. So this is the larger trading range that has developed. Last time we were up here, rotated back down. Now we're in here. Do we get another rotation back down ahead? So short term, on a day time frame basis, showing weakness. Pullbacks could be selling opportunities until we see a strong low develop. Looking at Bitcoin, this one down 0.8%. This one also seeing some selling pressure on inflation data, but not quite as much as equities. And this one is showing signs that perhaps a flush is coming up ahead. You had your strong G-squat low here that developed on that Monday, and then you can see the midpoint of that rejection here. We've traded a lot through that level, and that could open up more downside through the tail event, through into a new low, and perhaps even drop us below 90K up ahead. So a flush or flash type of event could happen up here coming soon for Bitcoin. This one has been very bullish though. Even if we drop into 90, 88, somewhere in that zone, we could experience a nice snapback to the 100K level. So still showing an ability to hang up here overall, but the fact that we're pushing through that midpoint of the rejection day opens up a push through the tail event and downward at least a little bit. On a longer term basis, we're still looking at 75. 74 to 75 could be a tremendous point point here for a longer term entry back up toward the 110 level and up toward the 130 target. So even if we did drop into 75, that could be an opportunity for a long-term entry. Looking at ETH, this one right now kind of break even on the day, but like the ES, this one is starting to push the midpoint of that rejection day low. Once you start to push beyond that midpoint, especially on a daily closing basis, that's where a flush event can happen through that rejection day low. So are we headed to a proper test at 2200 up ahead? If so, perhaps a lower low failure could be an opportunity to be in again from a longer term basis. So right now, starting to put pressure on that midpoint, a failure there, and it opens up some downside in a near-term basis standpoint. All right, that is it for now. We'll see how this plays out heading into the rest of the day. Good luck. Trade well. I'll see you in the trading room. Take care.